All right, so the first thing you're going to be doing is working on sides 1 and 2. That's kind of one operation. So when you guys are looking at your block, the odd numbers are just going to be what are called finish cuts. So we're just going to take off enough to clean up the surface. We don't want to take off too much. We'll do our sizing cut down on side 2 where we'll actually bring it to the finished dimension. So the first thing you're going to do with any block before you put it into a vise is you want to deburr at least the sides that are going to be held in the vise. So right now I'm going to set this in the vise just like this. So that means it's going to be held down on the bottom here. So I want to deburr at least these 4 edges with my file. So when I use the file, you always want to only go in the push direction. And so basically I start at the one end and I go towards the handle and I just file off the one edge, and I'm feeling for any burrs or any chips or anything on the edge. I might actually hit it from both ways. Okay, I'm going to go on the other edge, kind of hit all 4 of those. Make sure they're both nice and cleaned up because that allows it to sit relatively flat on the parallels when I set them in there. So now when we're getting ready to put the part in, again, cleanliness is really important. You want to make sure we wipe down vise jaws and then make sure there's nothing there with your fingers. And then you have 2 parallels, a set of parallels that you're going to also put in there. Wipe them down, make sure they're nice and cleaned up. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and set it in there. You'll notice it's almost as tall as the vise jaw. For squaring up a block like this, we need them that tall. And I'll explain why when we get to side number 2. So I'm going to go ahead and set both parallels in, and then I'm going to set the block right on to the parallels. And I'm going to snug the vise up. So once the vise is tightened, what you'll notice is this parallel right here moves, and that's okay. On side number 2, we're going to lock both of the parallels in, but for side 1, we're just trying to get ourselves a flat reference surface. So that's our goal right now. So I'm set up, I'm ready to cut. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the machine. You're going to have to calculate your RPM based on what we've talked about, but I'm going to go ahead and just kind of get set up for now. I'm going to crank the table so that it's close to the part. Okay, so it looks like I'm not going to be able to do the entire thing with one pass, so I'm going to go ahead and go off the back edge a little bit, or off the front edge a little bit. And then I need to touch the tool off. And basically what that entails is you want to get right down on eye level so that you can see the bottom of the cutter as it's going. And then you want to crank up the table slowly until it just makes contact with the part. And that's touching your tool off. So right now I'm very close. I slow it down. And you'll hear it start to hit. And that's it right there. So you touch the part off. At this point, you want to crank the table off of the part, or crank the part away from the cutter and get it into the air to get ready for our cut. Now before you start taking material off, you always want to know where you're going. And so right now I'm going to set the micrometer dial on the Z-axis to 0. And the way I do that is I loosen up this collar right here, nice and loose. You don't have to take it all the way off. And then I rotate the micrometer dial until the 0 lines up with the reference line, just like that. And then tighten the collar back up. That way I know exactly how many thousandths I'm taking off of this part. And so for now I'm just going to take about 10 thousandths. That's a finish pass, and as long as it cleans up, I don't have to take any more off of this side, and this side will be done. Now if I take 10 thousandths and it doesn't clean up, if there's still areas that didn't get cut on the surface, you're going to have to take a little bit more, but for right now this is where I'm going to start. So I'm going to go ahead and crank the part over. I'm going to keep my feed rate nice and consistent. And if the chips are kind of going all over the place, you can use a guard to deflect them. Now even though I got the front edge of the cutter off, I want to keep a nice consistent feed rate until the entire surface or entire cutter is clear of the part. So now you can see I have that nice finish pass on half of the block. Notice I'm not putting my fingers at the block because I have a spinning cutter. But now I need to crank my Y-axis so that I can clear off the rest of that. So I'm going to go ahead and just crank it so that it's going to encompass the rest of that path. And I'm going to go back the other way. Nice and consistent. until side 1 is totally done. And you'll notice that 10 thousandths on this side was perfectly fine. It cleaned up the entire surface. I don't have to worry about doing any more to side 1. Okay, so once that's done, I'm going to turn the machine off and I'll take the part out. Okay, now since I made a cut, I need to deburr this side because there's some burrs here. If I go like this, I can feel the burrs on the side. And I'm going to flip this over and put side number 1 down. So I need to make sure those burrs are gone. So I'm going to flip those over. Now side 2 is actually a sizing cut. So I'm going to be taking enough cuts to bring down the thickness to the correct thickness that was specified in our print. So now I'm going to go ahead and put side 2 up. Now here's the difference with side 2. I'm going to snug it up, but this is where the dead blow hammer comes in. Anytime you're doing one of the even numbers, you need to do what's called seating the parallels, or tapping it down. So right now you'll notice that this parallel is loose. This one is actually, it's a little loose, but it's fairly tight. But I need them both to be locked into place. And all you're going to do is take a dead blow and give it a couple of good taps and then check, and you'll notice that both parallels are now locked in place, and that tells me that side 1 is now referenced off the vise, which is good with the machine and parallel with the machine. So when I cut side 2, it'll be perfectly parallel with side 1, and then we can worry about making side 3 and 4 square to sides 1 and 2. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take a finish pass on this side so that I get a point of measurement. So I go ahead and I crank it down again. I'm going to bring it over and retouch off this part. So I just bring it over and bring up the Z until I touch it. Just like that, I crank it off. I'm going to zero out my Z-axis again, and I'm going to take 10 more thousandths. So I'm going to take 10 thousandths right now. And again, this is just right now to get ourselves a flat surface that we can measure on. Notice we didn't measure side 1 because we weren't bringing it to anything. So I'm going to go ahead and get side number 2 just cleaned up. Bring the Y-axis over and come back. Nice and consistent until it's all the way off. Then I turn the machine off, and I'm going to grab the measurement kit and I'm going to measure and see where I'm at. So once I have my measurement kit, I'm going to go ahead and just get a reading off of this part. Make it so you guys can see it. Double checking my caliper, make sure I'm zeroed out. We're zeroed, and then I'm going to measure the thickness of the part right now. So I come right over here. And if I look, I'm at 1.365. So 1.365, and then if I take a calculator, if you need, you can do 1.365 minus the final thickness that we were supposed to be, which is 1.250. And that's going to tell me I need to take 115 thousandths off of this part. So I know that each rotation of this Z-axis is 100 thousandths. So I'm going to be taking 100 thousandths and then another 15. So one rotation and then another 15. Now keep in mind, the maximum you can take with this is 50 thousandths. So right now I'm going to re-zero out my Z-axis because now I'm at a reference point and I'm going to basically end up back at 0 and then another 15 to finish it up. So the first cut's only going to be 50 thousandths. So I go a half a rotation and I go 50 thousandths. Go ahead and turn the machine back on. And take this 50 thousandths cut. Now notice it's going to be a lot heavier. So you may want to slow the feed rate down a little bit. Don't force it. Let the cutter do its work. So that's 50 thousandths. But I still have to take it off the back part of it. get off the part, I'm going to take another 50. So now I'm ending up back at 0. That's my full 100. I double check my parallels because they may have become unseated, but you'll notice right now that they are still nice and seated. If they did become unseated, you have to turn off the machine, take them out, and re-clean everything because there's probably a chip down in between something. So now I have my other 50, so I'm going to go ahead and take that off. Go and take the rest of that off of this side. Double check the measurement at this point for a couple times until I get there, depending on how many passes I have, just to make sure that nothing's moved on me. In theory, I should only have to do 15 more thousandths, but we're going to verify that right now. So if I bring my caliper over, close it up, okay, and something must have shifted a little bit, which is why we double check these. Oh no, actually if I measure this out, I'm actually at about 1.264 to 5. So 15 more thousandths to take off, which is exactly what we expected. And that 15 thousandths is our finish pass. The finish pass should only be about 10 to 15 thousandths. So I'm going to go ahead and crank the micrometer dial over here just to 15, just like that. And then that should be it as far as the cuts for this side. So I'm going to go ahead, nice finish pass. This one should be a lot lighter. Keep your feed rate consistent so that it's a nice surface finish. Crank it over and do my last pass, and that'll be it for side number 2. Okay, turn the machine off. I'm not going to go grab it right now because it's hot from being cut. You'll learn that the hard way. Okay, but I am going to double check the measurement. I'm going to bring it in, and if you look, it ended up right at where it should be. I'm about 1.250, maybe a half a thousandth under, but that's pretty good. Our tolerance will probably be about 5 thousandths. And that's that for squaring up sides 1 and 2.